Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is actually my very first video for Trinity stamps. I'm super excited about it. And as soon as I saw this Here's to Brew set, I had an immediate idea for it. I'm also using the Dad Sentiments and then the Catching Some Rays stencil. So we're going to start with some ink blending for our background. This is a more masculine card, though you could switch up the colors and use it for, pretty much anyone. Anybody you know who likes beer. So we're going to be doing a kind of a Frosty mug. So I am just going through with my distress inks and I'm putting down my base background. I chose to do blues because I thought that would contrast with the color of the beer really nicely. But also blue is my boyfriend. Blue is my favorite. So just going to go through and do this kind of in like a halo. So it's lighter in the middle because we really want to draw the viewer's eye to the focal point, which is in this case our Frosty mug. And obviously the rays will help do that because they point directly to it. But yeah, so it's been a really long time since I've worked for a company or worked with a company that did like really cute stamps. It's probably 3 or 4 years now. So I was really, really excited when they reached out to me to be able to do some work with them because it's kind of going to feel like it's going to fill this need that I have to use really cute stuff. And their stuff is really cute. So if you've never checked them out before, I highly recommend that you do. Plus the owner is just darling. Tanisa is wonderful. But so this was like from 2 releases ago, when they released this, I was like, oh, I have such a good idea for that beer mug. Well, I think it's a good idea anyway. I thought it was cute. So now the base layer is done. If you ever watched my channel before, you know I always do 2 layers of ink blending, but I'm actually going to do my second layer with my stencil on. I'm using the sticky mat from my stamp wheel to hold my stencil in place. And then I'm just going to go back through and do the same colors, except this time instead of doing lightest to darkest, I'm going to do darkest to lightest. You may also notice that when I'm doing my ink blending, I'm coming up a little bit higher with the darker colors on the bottom, and that's because I know my beer is going to be centralized, but it's going to be up just a bit so I have room for my sentiment. If you watch my channel, I had recently shared that my father-in-law's birthday is coming up, and so I had done the card from the kids, but I needed a card for him from Eric and I, and so I thought that this would be just a really cute little, plus there's like this little pun in the set. It says Happy Beer Day, like beer hops. It's adorable. It's super cute. And he loves puns. So once I did the first one, I went back and forth on how to do the smaller stripes. And I thought about doing a gold, but then I was like, no, I don't want anything to compete with the beer. So I decided to do white. So I'm just using a white paste I'm just playing it with a palette knife going, right over. And I am applying it in the direction that the rays are going, so everything fills in really nicely. And then this white it's opaque. You can tell, I guess maybe it has a slight transparency or maybe it just, when it's wet, picks up a little bit of the distress ink, but it's pretty white when it goes on, and it dries pretty well that way. And so I was really, really happy with the decision to do the white. Just with any paste, of course, you want to make sure that you're cleaning your supplies immediately. So like as soon as this was done and I peeled it off, I took my sticky mat, the stencil, and my palette knife to the sink and washed them. That's why I'm moving it right away instead of letting it dry. I need to clean up that paste before it dries on my sticky mat. Now onto the stamping, and for this I just need the arm and the mug. I'm just going to stamp, this is Hero Arts Intensified Black ink. This is safe for alcohol markers. I'm going to be doing coloring with my Copic markers. So that's what I mean, that's just kind of like my go-to. I enjoy coloring, and I knew that like I wanted to create the texture with the colors. And so you could do this with watercolor, with colored pencils, or whatever you're into. But for me, it's Copic markers because I know I'm going to be able to get the texture that I want in the beer. So for me, I picked out some skin tone colors for the hand. Now I am going to color the whole thing, but I actually only end up really, I mean, I like amputated it at the wrist, quite honestly, because I only really needed the hand in my card. But so for the shading, we're going to add shading any point where two places meet or where one object lays on top of the other. So all of those fingers, because the fingers are pressed against each other, we're going to have shading all against those fingers. Where the thumb is kind of tucked behind the pointer finger, there's going to be shading. There'll be a little bit more shading where the wrist is kind of dipping in, but as with most of my coloring, the majority of what you're going to see is the mid-tones. So it just, like, that's what the majority of it is going to get filled in with, is the mid and then the light tone, because we're just using the darks to create those shadows. When you look at your, when your hand or your skin or whatever, there's no shadows being created on that arm. So they're really outside of just where the wrist dips in. It's mostly just going to be the lightest color. So I did go through and blend those out. I did go over it a couple of times, probably because my marker needs to be re-inked for real. And then because I lost a little bit of my shadow, I went back in with the darkest color, and where the lines are drawn, where I wanted it to be the darkest, I added a little bit more shading, just a little line of dark. I am going to show you how I colored the foam, just in case you don't want to do the texture and you just want to color this image. I think you guys know I like to leave everything in, because maybe somebody doesn't want to do the texture that I'm going to put on the foam of the beer. Maybe they just want to color it. And so I wanted to include that as well, even though in my card, by the time it's done, you're not going to see any of this coloring. But I do think it came out super cute. When you're coloring something white, you're just adding in the shadows. So the majority of that is still going to be white. You're just going to add in a bit of shadows, kind of rounded where it's dripping down, and then just extending out the line where it's like rolling over the top. For the glass, this definitely could have been colored where it was like reflecting the beer inside, but I didn't really think that that was necessary since we are going to do kind of the frosty look. So I just kept it really simple with some blues. This is interesting. I will be interested to know if you do this. Do you guys ever like craft with friends? Now that, I think it's more common, FaceTime is a thing, or, calling through Facebook Messenger, or Google had one too, I think. But do you ever get on the FaceTime or the phone with your friends in the video and craft at the same time? I don't typically do that. I have just a couple of friends that I talk to via video every once in a while. I have one that I talk to all the time, and it's because she's across the pond. So I never see her. Unless we're on video. But when I was doing this card, I was actually doing it with my friend Dawn. So she was doing a completely different project, and we were just kind of chatting like we were coworkers, since we both, do this for a living and work from home. So it was actually really kind of fun. So if you've never tried it, I would highly recommend it. So that way, you feel like you're crafting with a friend. Because, well, you are, just not in the same room. So you might notice that when I went through and did this, I chose some warmer browns, and And that was on purpose because I'm going to use a glazing technique. I knew the beer needed to be a bit more yellow, but I didn't want it to be glaringly yellow because that would be unrealistic. So here what you see me doing is a technique called stippling, and this is going to create the texture as if like the bubbles in the beer were, moving around. And so you can see I'm going all over with all of the dots. And so you want to do all the colors and just slightly extend like the darkest color into the next color and so on and so forth. And then the glazing comes in with this yellow. It's a really, really bright, I actually think it's called acid yellow. But just going in and just glazing over this brown is really going to help it look more like beer, like that amber color. And then I did go back in and do just some more dots because a lighter color of an alcohol marker will lift a darker color. But I was really, really thrilled with the way that it came out. I think it looks pretty accurate. But going all over the area with the lighter colors is necessary because lighter color copics will remove ink. So here is how we're going to get the texture on the actual foam. I went in with a pouncer and some Versamark. A way easier way to do this would be with a Versamark marker. But ladies and gents, I do not have one. So here's how I'm going to do it. I pounced it right onto, like the Versamark right onto where I wanted it. I sprinkled on my white puff embossing powder. This embossing powder puffs when you heat it. And then in order to make sure I only have it where I want it, I'm going to take a dry paintbrush and then I'm just going to go in and remove any of the embossing powder that is where I don't want it. So you can see I'm just going in, I'm cleaning off my brush as I go, tapping off my paper as I go, and I just worked my way around. I left the puff on the little drops and I left the puff on the like the actual head of the beer as it's coming over the top. This added such a fun texture to it and really made it look like it was foaming. Really, really love the way that it looked. Now, I'm going to tell you that I didn't make sure that it was all cleaned off of the black outline because I wanted it to cover up a part of the black outline and be a little irregular because that's how the foam would look, in real life. So you just heat that up and then it puffs up and it's a ton of fun. For snow, for beach surf, for things like this, just really great. And then I'm going to use the coordinating die cuts. Now I pulled out I think it's Simply Sentiments Dad. I pulled out the stamps and the dies because I wasn't sure what I was going to use. I ended up only using the dies from that. And then here I'm going to stamp Cheers, which is in the Here's to Brew set. And I'm going to stamp that after I use my anti-static tool in white pigment ink and then heat emboss it with just white detail embossing powder because I just find I get the best result with that, even though I don't really love pigment ink. But sometimes, you got to do what you got to do. So if you have not sat down and crafted with a friend online, I would highly recommend that. A lot of people say like they come to my channel for story time because it feels like crafting with a friend. But if you've made any crafty friends online, I would recommend definitely doing that. So here I have all my pieces, parts, die cut out now, and then I'm just going to start building and putting everything together. I did trim my background down just a little bit so that I would have a white border. I tested it kind of both ways and I liked the white border much better. I felt like it tied in the white border around my hand and beer a lot nicer. Plus I have that white on the sentiment. So sometimes just a little, if you're feeling like your card needs a little something, just try a little matte. You don't have to cut it first. You can just, hold it up next to it and see if maybe that would be something that would help give you a little bit of pop. In this case, it definitely did. So I'm just going to adhere this down to the white. Because we have the paste on there, it is a little bit texturized. So I did have to smooth it down a couple of times to make sure everything was adhered flat. And then I'm going to attach the hand to the mug before I put it on, because I am going to pop it up on some foam adhesive, just to give it like a little bit more oomph, because we don't exactly have a ton going on in this card. So just to give it a little extra something. So I'm going to put foam tape everywhere that I need it, attach it, and then I will trim off the arm to match the edge of my card. And like I said, I am adhering this up just a little bit higher, so that I make sure that I have room for my sentiment. Right now it looks a little weird, but once the sentiment gets filled in the bottom, it doesn't. It really does look like it is centered. So yeah, I remember one time, because I go to a craft retreat like twice a year, and did the last couple of years, obviously everything was shut down and we couldn't get together. So we did like a retreat via Zoom, where there was a bunch of us who got on a Zoom call, and I didn't craft, but I was happy to chat just to see my friends. And I think that that's just so fun. Like there's so many things I don't like about technology, but that particular thing I really, really do like. I think it's great that we have the ability to do that, because so many of my friends I've met through this hobby, and they live in all these other places, so I don't get to see them. So the dad was adhered flat, and then the cheers was popped up. Here is really how we're going to make this frosty little mug pop. And the trick is this white glitter pen. This is from, it's a clear, or a white Wink of Stella from Zig. And when it dries, it's clear when it goes on, but when it dries, it is an opaque white. And so by going over the lines in the mug, like right over the black, as well as adding these additional lines over the beer, it really gives it like this fun kind of frosty look, that is super, super fun. In order to bolster those up just a little bit, I am adding a little bit of white gel pen on like the sides of the lines. I'm not putting a ton of pressure, and I'm letting the pen skip if it wants to. It doesn't have to be perfect, just to give it a little extra highlight and make those things pop. And then this is the whole card. So I really like the way that it came out. I hope that you will give this a try, maybe with some different kind of mugs or drinks or whatever, since it's summertime. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.